Welcome everyone to the fourth round of the FIDE World Cup tiebreaks. This is the game between Arjun Erigaisi and Peter Leko. And in the tiebreaks, after two classical games ended in draws in the tiebreak, Arjun Erigaisi won the first game with the black pieces. And now he's facing Peter Leko in the second game. We are showing you this one as we hadn't published this video before, and Arjun looks very confident here. He gets up out of respect for his legendary opponent, Grandmaster Peter Leko. What a guy! World class commentator, and that's something that a lot of people know about him, but very few people are aware of the fact that he is a legend in the world of chess. Back in the day in 2004, he played for the World Championship match against Vladimir Kramnik and very nearly won it, and of course has won so many top events. And it's so nice to see him kind of making a comeback to chess. He played at the Olympiad in 2024. Now he's playing at the World Cup. Maybe he'll play at another Olympiad as well. So amazing to see, and he's facing one of the biggest talents of the current generation. Pawn to d4 by Arjun, knight f6, c4 played here, and Peter plays e6, knight to c3, and we have the Nimzo Indian with bishop b4. Yes, and Arjun plays queen c2, the classical Nimzo. d5 striking in the center. Many times when you take, there's also this line queen d5 which was quite popular in the olden days. He takes, but Peter decides to take with the pawn, and now Arjun pins the knight with bishop to g5, putting some pressure in the center. Peter asks the question to the bishop drops back to h4. White's plan is simple: push the pawn to e3, bishop comes out, knight e2 or f3, and continue. Knight c6 played, attacking the d4 pawn, and now g5. Peter is going all out. Bishop g3, and now h5 looks like a great move to kind of put pressure on the bishop. He goes knight e4, which is interesting. Some pressure here, some pressure there as well. Bishop d3. And now, do you take on g3? Maybe bishop f5 could be a possibility. He goes f5, and this leads to slightly dubious position, because when I play f3, the f5 pawn could get weak. Also, the king on e8 is a bit exposed. So Arjun now continues with his normal development to e2, a good move, and his idea is f3 takes, knight takes g3, so castles. Not yet threatening to trap the bishop on g3. He plays f3. I like this move. Asking immediately to clarify the situation. I think taking the bishop makes sense, and Arjun has a choice to take with the knight or the pawn. Taking with the pawn makes so much sense because you open up your rook on the h file. King g7 played, a good move defending the pawn on h6. a3, asking questions to the bishop there. On b4, he takes on c3, and Peter's one of the main issues is that he needs to win this position on demand, and that's never easy. But you keep playing moves. Bishop e6 played. Black's position still fighting here. Arjun simply long castles, a good move there. And black would love to start hurling the queenside pawns, but it's not so easy. So first knight e7, defending the f5 and d5 pawns. Pawn to e4 played. Takes on e4, f takes e, fe. And now definitely the black king starts to feel a bit of heat. Bishop g4 played. I guess shifting the rook to e1 makes a lot of sense here. He does that. Arjun keeps up the pressure on the e-file, also planning to open up the bishop. c6. That's a bit too slow here. Maybe it was necessary to come back and start attacking here, but c6. Now, queen d2. I love this move because you are eyeing these two pawns here. Queen to d6 with an eye on the g3 pawn. And he takes pawn takes pawn. C takes on d5. just put the rook on e5 square. Yes, he puts his rook on the e5 square here. And knight jumps into f5. A big mistake here. There are maybe many good moves. Rook takes d5 works. There's rook e1. Maybe the better choice was queen f6, but Arjun takes the pawn. Rook takes d5. And for Peter Leko, this position is now almost done. He hardly has any moves. He goes queen g3, but now rook d7 check. A very important move to be found. And Arjun just calculating it carefully, because there are some tricks and threats, with the pieces so well spaced out. Rook d7, good move. Now king g6 seems like a possibility. He's touching the king. If king h8, king g8, there's rook takes h6 and queen g5 finishing off the game. So he goes rook f7. And now rook h6 is a great move because threatens queen g5. He goes knight e4. Maybe not the best move because allows the queen trade, but from a match situation perspective, it seems like a prudent decision, because all that Arjun needs to qualify to round 5 is a draw. And Peter Leko offers a draw, but Arjun is like, sorry, I want to play on because I see no risk here. Queen takes f4, g takes f4, and knight to f2. So he's attacking the bishop, and the bishop attacks the knight. Knight comes to e3. And Arjun takes the knight, takes the bishop, knight takes knight, defending here. But rook h4 could be a very, very strong move. The point being, yeah, he finds it. If rook g8, there's bishop c4 check. So knight goes back to f6. A choice between taking on h6 or f4. I think taking on f4 makes sense. Arjun, a clean pawn up now. He goes king e7. And now bishop to e4. Oh, this slightly tricky move by Arjun, allowing the trade. I mean, much better was bishop f5, perhaps with the idea of g4 or king d2, maybe bringing the king in, but bishop e4. Now Peter takes. This rook endgame is drawn with very accurate play. It's never easy. Plays his king to d7, rook to g4 played, and now rook to f8. White brings the king up, king d2, rook f6 played. We bring the king in, king to d3, and king c6. a4. Black brings the king in, playing very carefully here. And now rook h4 with the idea of giving a check. So rook to g6. And pawn comes up to g4. a6 played. And pawn pushes to a5, clamping down the queen side pawn structure. King to e6. Maybe better was just b6 to break here, but king e6. And now the white king comes in, king e4. Once again, Arjun is better. Peter Leko slightly missing that point of king entering in. But he has very little time on the clock. Plays king d6. Now king f5. You're running out of squares for your rook. He goes b4, once again giving a chance of rook e6 to his opponent. King d3 and rook g6 back. Yes, maybe Peter has a chance again to hold this. How is Arjun going to continue here? He goes king to c4. He wants to break on the queen side perhaps. Rook f6, a mistake here because rook h5. The more prudent approach was b6 here, ab, and king c6, and then taking here, because that would give you some good counterplay. Also b5 with the same idea, but rook f6 allows rook h5 to activate the rook, and Arjun finds it. Rook g6, he attacks the pawn, but now rook f5. Yes, Arjun does not miss such opportunities. And if rook takes g4, you have check, pushing the king away, winning this pawn on h6, king c7, takes on h6, and this is actually game over. Now, because you are pawn up as white, you have a passer here. The rook comes down, gives a check. King c6. And now if I give another check, maybe king d5, I want to enter in, or I can push the pawn. Yes, he pushes the pawn, king d6, and now a check to push the king away. Or maybe Arjun can snatch the pawn as well on b7. Yeah, he takes it. And now slowly you can bring your king in. He checks from behind. So king d4. Rook check. King c3. And now next move, I have a check and I pick up this and have two extra pawns. Peter gives a check. King b2. He goes rook f1. But now just check, king d5, and rook takes a6, and it's done. White is winning. King c4, trying for that final little counterplay, but you can't push the king back. I can just go a3 and a4. Peter Leko resigns. Arjun wins 2-0, moves into round number 5 where he'll face Levon Aronian. But this clash between these two amazing players of two different generations was so exciting to see at the FIDE World Cup. For me, it was one of the most enticing battles. I loved how Peter managed to keep equality in the classical time control. But when things moved to shorter time formats in the rapid, it was clear that Arjun is the superior player.